He crushed 7 villagers before they could even scream. Chains couldn't calm him. Prayers didn't reach him. Everyone knew this elephant would kill again. Until, on the 10th day, a blind girl stepped into his cage and touched his face. What happened next silenced an entire village. But now let's come back to the moment when it all started. The temple courtyard had once been a place of quiet prayer. Now it smelled of urine, rust, and fear. He stood there, day and night, unmoving except for the occasional twitch of an ear or shift of his foot. Massive. Gray. Scarred. A deep gash ran along his shoulder, stitched roughly by the village healer under protest. They called him Daru. Some refused to say his name at all. Not after what he did. Children were forbidden near the temple. Markets had moved 3 streets away. Even the priests prayed from behind the stone wall, never daring to enter the inner yard where he stood. Except for KiIIer, the old man who brought bananas every morning. He never spoke to the elephant. Just placed the fruit gently on the ground, never too close, and limped away. On the 7th morning, Daru refused to eat. On the 8th, he crushed the offering with his foot. By the 9th, KiIIer stopped coming. Rumors spread like fire in a dry field. His eyes turn red when the moon rises. He remembers every face he's seen. He killed his own handler before the villagers. The chief, a man of few words and quick hands, finally declared what many had waited to hear. In 10 days, he dies. The blacksmiths began forging the bolt. The fire pit was prepared behind the temple. Some cheered. Some prayed. But none questioned it. Far from the temple, on the edge of the village where the trees grew thick and tangled, lived a girl named Amaya. She had never seen the elephant. She had never seen anything. Born blind, she knew the world by sound, by scent, and by the feel of the earth beneath her bare feet. She didn't know what Daru looked like. But she had heard him. That first night after the attack, when the villagers locked themselves indoors, Amaya had stood outside, barefoot in the dirt, listening to the jungle scream. She'd heard the trees break. The breathless panic of goats. The distant thunder of feet too heavy for peace. And one sound more than any other, a deep, aching rumble that wasn't anger, but pain. She didn't tell her father. Didn't tell the healer who checked her eyes every week and whispered, "Poor girl," when she thought Amaya couldn't hear. Instead, she pressed her hand to the ground. And listened. 10 days passed. Daru did not sleep. He did not eat. He just stood. Waiting for something. Or someone. On the evening of the 9th day, as the sun poured gold across the rooftops and children were called inside, Amaya asked a question no one had ever expected from her. "Can someone take me to the temple?" Her father froze. "You will not go near that beast. I want to hear him. You've heard enough." She tilted her head. There was no defiance in her voice. Just certainty. Like the sound of rain before it falls. He didn't let her go. So that night, she left alone. The path was uneven, filled with stones and whispers. People murmured from behind closed windows as the girl in white walked barefoot toward the one place everyone feared. She carried nothing. Said nothing. But in her hand was a single hibiscus flower. Red. Soft. Whole. At the temple gate, the guards tried to stop her. She simply said, "I am not afraid," and kept walking. When she stepped into the courtyard, Daru turned. For the first time in days, he moved, not just his legs, but his entire body. His ears flared. His trunk raised slightly. He could smell her. Not like the others. No sweat. No fear. Just quiet. And jasmine. Amaya stepped forward, slowly. The chains rattled behind him. He watched her, chest heaving. One wrong step, and the world would break again. But she didn't flinch. Didn't pause. She walked until she was close enough to feel his breath on her skin. And then, she reached up, blind, unshaken, and touched his face. For a moment, no one breathed. The guards had been ready to run, to scream, to pull the girl back by her white sleeve. But the moment her fingers touched the elephant's face, everything changed. Daru stopped trembling. His head lowered just slightly, like a mountain softening under wind. Amaya's hand rested between his ancient eyes, not afraid, not even curious. Her fingers explored with quiet trust, brushing over rough skin, deep creases, the scars that maps couldn't trace. Then she smiled. "You're not angry," she whispered. "You're just alone." Daru exhaled, a sound like thunder held back by time. No one knew how long they stood there. Maybe it was minutes. Maybe only heartbeats. But by the time the priest finally dared to step closer, the villagers had gathered at the temple gate. They whispered like children near the edge of a bedtime tale. "She touched him." And he bowed his head. "Is she a spirit?" "No. She's the blind girl from the hill." "Then why didn't he hurt her?" No one had answers. Only silence. And the sound of chains no longer pulling tight. That night, the execution was postponed. No one said it aloud, but something had changed. The beast hadn't been tamed, not really. But now, the villagers weren't sure if he was a beast at all. Amaya returned home before the stars were high. Her father didn't speak. He simply sat by the fire with his hands trembling over his knees. When she sat beside him, he whispered, "You could have died." She leaned her head on his arm. So could he. The next morning, Amaya woke early. She prepared slices of mango and soft-boiled rice in a woven basket. She walked alone. No one tried to stop her this time. When she stepped through the temple gate, Daru was already standing. Waiting. His ears flapped once. She smiled. "Did you dream last night?" she asked. The elephant made a sound, low and soft, almost like a laugh muffled by distance. She held out a piece of fruit. His trunk brushed her palm with impossible care, curling gently around the mango before lifting it slowly. Then he leaned down and nudged her shoulder. Gently. Purposefully. A thank you. Or something like it. Every day after that, Amaya came. Sometimes she brought food. Sometimes just songs. She'd sit cross-legged and hum old stories her grandmother used to tell her. She'd talk to Daru like he was a friend, not a secret. And Daru listened. Always listened. The guards grew used to the visits. The villagers began to linger by the gates again, not to jeer, but to watch. There was something about the way Amaya moved near him, fearless and soft, that made people uncomfortable, but also curious. Because if she, blind, quiet, small, could calm the killer, what did that say about them? By the fifth day, children began sneaking drawings into the temple walls, crayon sketches of a big elephant and a little girl holding his ear. By the seventh, the baker's wife brought leftover honey buns, for the animal, or the girl, whichever eats first. And by the 10th, even the blacksmith, the same man who forged the bolt meant to kill Daru, stood at the fence and whispered, "I'm not sure I want to finish the work." But not everyone changed. The mayor was furious. "This is a circus. The beast killed 7 people." One of his guards dared to ask, "But what if he had reason?" The mayor turned. "He's an animal. Animals don't need reason." But that night, even he couldn't sleep. Because the sound of the elephant humming softly with the girl echoed through the village, a lullaby no one understood, but everyone felt. Amaya didn't ask about the past. She didn't care why Daru had attacked the village. But one afternoon, as she touched a deep scar along his left leg, she whispered, "This wasn't made by us." Daru shivered. She placed her forehead against his rough skin. "They hurt you too, didn't they?" The elephant knelt. Not like he was bowing, but like he was remembering. The next morning, a traveler arrived. He was a herder from the south, older than most, with skin like sunburned bark and eyes that never blinked. When he saw the elephant behind the temple, he froze. "That's him," he said. "Who?" asked a child. "That elephant." He used to belong to the logging camps near the mountain. They chained him for years. Used whips to force him to haul trees. One day, he snapped his ropes and vanished into the jungle. The boy's eyes widened. You mean, he was hurt before? The man nodded. The overseer who beat him disappeared the same day. The story spread. Daru wasn't just a killer. He was a survivor. And now, the village began to split. Half said he should still die. Half said he should be freed. But no one said he was just an animal anymore. Amaya stayed quiet through the arguments. She continued to visit, to listen, to hum. Until one day, Daru did something no one expected. As she sat beside him, her hand on his cheek, he reached down and placed his trunk gently in her lap. Then he closed his eyes and began to breathe deeply. Amaya's fingers found the edges of his scarred skin and settled there. For a long time, they stayed like that. A girl who couldn't see, and an elephant who had seen too much. The elephant was no longer a monster, but he was not yet a memory. For 10 days now, Daru had not raised his trunk in rage, not pulled at his chains, not roared once. Instead, each day began with the sound of a blind girl's footsteps and ended with the soft rumble of her voice humming stories to an audience of one. The village didn't know what to believe anymore, and that frightened them more than the elephant ever had. In the open square, the mayor gathered the elders. The meeting was supposed to be secret. It wasn't. Because when fear takes root, it spreads like smoke, through doorways, through whispers, through cracked shutters and narrow alleys. And that morning, the smoke was everywhere. He killed people, said the mayor. Let's not forget that. He was tortured, one elder replied. By others, not us. That doesn't excuse what happened here. 7 graves still wait for justice. But is killing him justice? Asked another. Or revenge? The mayor slammed his cane against the stone step. Justice and revenge were the same face when it's your son in the ground. Silence fell. No one met his eyes. Because he was right. And he was wrong. At the same time. That afternoon, they came to Amaya's house. 2 men. One with a scroll. The other with guilt in his voice. We're asking for your help, they said. Amaya's father stepped between them. You've asked enough. But Amaya only tilted her head. Help how? The first man cleared his throat. We want you to bring him out. Into the square. No chains. Her father nearly shouted. You want to provoke him? No, the man said quickly. We want to prove he's safe. Prove he can walk among us. Amaya turned toward the sound of his voice. Or prove he still isn't. Silence. Then, quietly, the man said. Yes. Amaya said nothing for a long time. Then, he will come. But not for you. The next day, the sun rose through heavy clouds, not stormy, but thick, like the sky was holding its breath. Children stayed inside. Doors were bolted. The square was cleared, except for the crowd that slowly gathered behind fences and rooftops. At the temple, the great gates were opened for the first time in months. And out stepped Amaya. Her hand rested lightly on Daru's trunk. And Daru, not pushed, not prodded, not chained, followed. No one spoke. Not even the guards. The sound of his feet on the dirt echoed like thunder made of memory. He walked slowly, head lowered, trunk brushing the ground. And behind him, the girl in white. Leading him. Without eyes. But with trust. At the center of the square stood a large wooden platform. The mayor sat at the top. Next to him, a priest. A guard. A healer. And a boy, maybe 12, whose brother had been among the 7. They watched as Daru stepped forward. He stopped just before the platform. The air felt electric. Not from anger, but from waiting. Amaya turned to face the mayor's voice. You wanted him here. Now speak. The mayor stood slowly. His voice was steady. Too steady. Elephant, he began, as if Daru understood human titles. You have done harm. Deep harm. You were a victim, yes. But you became a threat. You became death. And now, we stand here to see what remains. He gestured toward the boy. This child lost his brother to your rage. He has not slept since. He cannot step into this square without shaking. The boy stared at Daru with wide, unblinking eyes. And Daru stared back. Slowly, he stepped forward. People gasped. Amaya said nothing. The guards clutched their weapons. But Daru didn't rush. Didn't roar. He stopped before the boy and slowly bent down, folding his massive front legs, lowering his huge form to the dirt like a mountain humbling itself. Then, gently, carefully, he extended his trunk. It hovered in front of the boy. Not demanding. Not threatening. Offered. The boy trembled. Then took one step forward. Another. Until his hand touched the warm, wrinkled skin. And when he did, he burst into tears. The kind children cry when the world doesn't make sense, but they feel safe anyway. Daru lowered his head further. And didn't move. The mayor said nothing. No one did. Because what could they say? Later that evening, after the crowd had drifted away, some still stunned, some still skeptical, Amaya and Daru remained in the square. She sat cross-legged beside him, leaning against his side. They still don't trust you, she said. But some do. Daru rumbled softly. You're patient, she whispered. You waited for me. You waited for them. She paused. Can you wait longer? The elephant was silent. But in that silence, there was peace. That night, while the village slept, a fire broke out in the weaving quarter. An oil lamp tipped in a storeroom. Flames climbed too fast. Wind fed them. And in one of the huts, a child screamed. The family couldn't reach her. Wood collapsed. Smoke billowed. Then, thunder. But not from the sky. From the street. From the temple. Daru. He charged through the alley. Broke the locked door. And as the hut collapsed, he curled his trunk through flame, wrapped it around the coughing, terrified child, and pulled her free. He set her gently on the ground. And stood guard as the flames licked the earth where she had just lain. By morning, no one called him beast. They called him guardian. And the girl who touched his face? They called her the one who sees what others won't. The fire had long been extinguished. The smoke had faded. But what lingered in the village wasn't the scent of burning wood, it was a shift. People walked differently now. Slower. With less suspicion in their steps. With more weight in their hearts. Because something had changed, not just around them, but within them. And it all began with a beast, who bowed his head to a blind girl. The morning after the rescue, the village square was quieter than usual. Not hushed in fear, but in reverence. In the middle of the temple courtyard, Daru stood in silence, his body still covered in soot, his skin bearing the marks of heat, ash and old scars. But now, he was more than a shadow. He was a symbol. Amaya sat beside him, her legs crossed on the packed earth. Her fingertips gently traced the edge of a bruised patch on his side, pausing each time she felt a rise or a rough mark. You didn't hesitate, she whispered. You didn't think about the pain. You just acted. Daru exhaled deeply, and the wind that passed through his trunk seemed to carry a warmth that only she could feel. They all saw you, she said. But more importantly, they saw you see them. That same afternoon, the mayor summoned the council. But this time, no guards stood at the door. No weapons rested nearby. And no one came with fear in their eyes. Instead, they brought silence. And questions. What happens now? Do we still treat him like a threat? Or like something else? No one used the word animal. Not anymore. The baker's wife spoke up. If that girl had gone into the fire, none of us could have saved her. But he did. A carpenter added. He didn't run. He chose to help. That matters. The mayor listened. Then looked out the window toward the temple, where Daru's massive form sat still like a statue beside Amaya. Then maybe it's time we chose differently too. 2 days later, the village gathered in the square. Not to vote. Not to argue. But to witness. In the center stood a low stone platform, now decorated with wreaths of jasmine, marigold, and braided grass, offerings not to a god, but to a being who had reminded them what humanity looked like. Daru was led, not pushed, into the square by Amaya. She didn't hold a rope. She didn't guide him with force. She simply walked, and he followed. Because trust doesn't need pulling. It only needs faith. Amaya stepped onto the platform. She faced the crowd, though she could not see them, and she spoke. This village used to live in fear. Of beasts. Of what we couldn't understand. But we forgot. Fear is not strength. And strength is not cruelty. She turned toward Daru. He was feared because he fought back. But no one asked why he had to. Until now. A murmur of agreement moved through the crowd like wind through tall grass. The mayor stepped forward. He held a scroll, but he didn't read from it. Instead, he tore it in half. This was the order for his execution. He dropped the torn parchment into the fire pit. The flames flared, then vanished. We don't need fire anymore, he said. We need memory. On the 7th day, the temple gates were opened one last time. The villagers lined the path leading from the temple to the jungle, the same path they once feared he would escape down. Now, they waited to watch him walk free. Some brought flowers. Some bowed. Others placed pebbles along the road, each marked with words like forgiveness, strength, thank you. Amaya stood by the gate, her hand resting on Daru's trunk. You can go now, she said. They won't stop you. Daru looked down at her. Then, unexpectedly, lowered himself. Not just to one knee, but fully, folding into the earth. He curled his trunk around her shoulders, lifting her slightly, gently, like a parent holding a sleeping child. She laughed softly. You're heavier than I imagined, she said. But you're not the one I carried. He set her down carefully, then turned, and walked. The villagers watched him vanish into the jungle. No one cheered. No one cried. They just watched, quiet, still, changed. Weeks passed. Then seasons. Children asked for stories at night. And the story they always asked to hear was, tell us about the blind girl and the elephant who saw. The elders obliged. With each telling, the story changed, a little. Some said the girl had powers. Some said the elephant had a human soul. But Amaya never corrected them. She simply said, he chose kindness. That was enough. They built a sculpture in the square, not large, not grand, but honest. It showed a girl with her hand outstretched, facing forward with eyes closed, and a large trunk curled gently in her direction. Underneath were 6 words carved in stone. She saw what none of us could. Amaya grew into a young woman. She never regained her sight. But she became a voice for others. Not a teacher. Not a healer. Something rarer, a listener. And in a small house near the edge of the village, every night, she sat by the window, listening for a sound she might never hear again. The heavy, patient steps of a friend who once needed saving. Some say Daru still lives. That deep in the forest, he watches over lost travelers, guiding them by instinct. Others say he passed peacefully, his body returning to the land, his spirit carried by the wind. But for those who were there, he never truly left. He remained in their hands when they helped, in their words when they forgave, in their silence when they listened before judging, and most of all, in the heart of a girl, who once touched the face of a beast, and found something better than fear.